All right, let's dive into one of the most powerful and honestly kind of magical forces in the entire world of finance. It's a concept called compounding, and really truly understanding it can change everything for you. So, let's start with a crazy question. Imagine you have a single piece of regular paper. If you could just keep folding it in half, over and over, do you think you could ever make it thick enough to actually reach the sun? I know, it sounds completely impossible, right? The show Mythbusters actually gave this a shot. They got a gigantic piece of paper. We're talking the size of a football field. And they used a steamroller to fold it 11 times. That one sheet became over 2,000 layers thick. That's what exponential growth looks like. But what happens if you keep going? Well, the answer is just mind-blowing. If you could, in theory, fold that piece of paper just 51 times, the stack would absolutely be thick enough to reach the sun. That is the unbelievable power of doubling. That's right, 93 million miles high, all starting from one thin sheet of paper. Now, this isn't some kind of magic trick. It's just raw, powerful mathematics. And this exact principle applies directly to our money. So, that whole mind-bending paper puzzle, it's actually the perfect way to understand compound interest. See, just like each fold doubles the paper's thickness, compounding lets your money grow on its own growth. It creates that very same powerful exponential curve. Even Albert Einstein was a fan. He famously called it the eighth wonder of the world. But, a lot of financial thinkers have added a really important update to that. They say that compounding that happens tax-free, well, that's the real miracle. That's when this incredible force gets totally unleashed. But here's the problem. Compounding is amazing, but it has one major enemy: losses. A big market downturn can just wipe out years and years of growth, and it forces that whole compounding engine to start all over again from a much, much lower point. So, this brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? The one every long-term investor has to ask. Is there a way to capture all that amazing upside of the market, the fuel for the compounding, while totally sidestepping the devastating downside? Well, the source material we're digging into today suggests a strategy to do exactly that. So the strategy that's proposed to solve this whole puzzle is called indexing, and you often see it used inside certain types of life insurance policies. The core idea is pretty simple. You link your money's growth to a market index, something like the S&P 500, but, and this is the key part, without ever putting your own money directly at risk in the market. So with indexing, your money's growth is tied to how an index performs, but your principal, your original cash, is never directly exposed to the market swings. So if the market crashes, your base amount doesn't go down with it. Which leads to the obvious question: how is that even possible? Well, it breaks down into a pretty clever three-step process. First, your money is held in the insurance company's general account. Think of it as a very safe, conservative place, mostly invested in things like corporate bonds. Second, the insurance company takes the interest it expects to earn on your money, and only the interest, and uses that to buy options on a market index. Your principal? It's never touched, it's totally safe, set aside. This whole setup creates two very different outcomes. If the market goes up, fantastic. The options pay out and you get credited with that growth, often up to a limit, which is called a cap. But if the market goes down, those options just expire without any value. You might not earn any interest that year, but, and this is huge, your principal is completely protected. You get a 0% return, and believe me, in a down market, zero is an absolute hero. This all leads to an incredibly powerful advantage called lock-in and reset. This is really the secret sauce, the engine that makes the whole strategy work. Once you get a gain, it's locked in. It becomes part of your new principal value, and it can never, ever be lost in a future downturn. Let's walk through this example to see it in action. In year one, the market soars 21%. Your policy has a cap, so you get credited with 11%. And boom, that new higher value is locked in. Okay, year two, the market crashes, down 15%. You lose nothing, zilch. Your value stays right where it was. Now, here's the key. The calculation for the next year resets. It starts measuring growth from the market's new low. So in year three, when the market rebounds a massive 66%, you get to capture a huge 61% of that recovery, because your policy gets to ride the wave back up without ever having suffered the fall.
The source material has this fantastic analogy for it. It's like a casino where you literally can't lose. You get to participate in the wins, but if you have a losing day, you just walk out with whatever you started with. And even better, every single gain you make is locked in and can't be taken away on future hands. To really see what this looks like in the real world, let's look at this incredible story where the principle of compounding was applied not just to money, but to pure, raw creativity and effort. So the setup was super simple. 200 teenagers were each handed $2. That's it. They had 6 weeks to compound that money, to grow it as much as they possibly could, and all the final profits would go to a local children's hospital. So what happened? Well, through things like mowing lawns, making and selling pizzas, and all these other small ventures, they turned that initial $400 into over $4,000. See, they didn't just earn money. They used their profits to fund bigger and bigger efforts, truly compounding their initial stake. But they weren't even done yet. They decided to double the money one last time. They bought and then donated a bunch of Christmas trees to a charity festival, which brought the grand total to $8,000 for the hospital. Amazing. And here is the most powerful part of the whole story. The money was incredible, of course, but the lesson, that was life-changing. One of those teenagers took the exact principle he learned: start small, reinvest your profits, and compound your efforts. And he used it to build his own multi-million-dollar landscaping company, a company which now donates hundreds of thousands of dollars to that very same hospital.
So this leaves us with one final question. You see, from folding paper to protecting your retirement, the principle is exactly the same. It always starts small. But with consistency and with time, the results can be just astronomical. So it makes you think, what will you start compounding?